So welcome to this third season of Season Day Scholar. And today we have got none other than the editor-in-chief of ES&T Letters, Professor Bryan Brooks. As you know that in the introduction, we keep the secret of the achievements and everything. So you can find in the description as well as at the end of the video. So welcome, Bryan. It is a great pleasure and honor to have you on this program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward to our conversation this evening, or this morning, rather.
Okay, so you got the supervisor, you got the university, and that Texas become your, that rest of the life you are spending there. How did you get your topic? I mean, this is my problem of the PhD.
Well, it's interesting, right? As I mentioned, I was interested in these sort of semi-arid and arid regions. And if you think about this, cities emerge, wastewater is discharged. I think for many years, rivers that had in-stream flows that are primarily relying on or even dependent on wastewater discharges were considered little more than conduits for waste. But then what you realize, of course, is that you're actually supporting downstream water uses. Anything from supporting the aquatic life and terrestrial, riparian habitats that are there, but then also the downstream uses for agriculture, for industry, and also for potable water intakes. And so, we really became interested in what we call these effluent dominated, effluent dependent systems. And so that was really where the sort of idea, the topic sprang, and working with Tom, who was also interested in taking this on. And in fact, we were going to build some stream mesocosms, so some artificial streams outdoors. And I had been involved with different non-flowing but standing water systems, so more of the lentic, model wetlands, ponds, tubs, this type of thing. But these were actually flowing systems, and so as part of the PhD, fortunately, the first site that we were looking at was not going to work out, and so I kind of got what I was hoping for. We ended up putting it at the local wastewater treatment plant. And so the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant, before it went into the receiving system or a river, which then about a mile downstream goes into a large drinking water supply for Dallas, Texas, and other cities, we diverted that effluent, and that became the source water for the streams. So I had a different kind of PhD because I had to build this outside experimental stream mesocosm facility, before I could actually do the research. And so there were a couple other graduate students working with us, and but I was kind of given more responsibility than maybe the typical new PhD student. And I think that's because I had a very rigorous master's program and had a lot of experience with some of these semi-field and laboratory studies. And so that's what happened. So we basically started examining effluent dominated streams and some of the water quality issues there. That was the start, and then we can go on to how we got more specific and how surprising things.
So do you have some memories that at that time, did you go with your liking or the essentiality or the urgency of the topic, or the kind of this is a hot topic, or it is going to be a future topic? So what was in the mind while this decision making? How, as far as I heard you just now, it feels like these things were not considered. That this is going.
No.
Although so please.
No. I mean, it was really an interest, right? It was a curiosity, and if you look at the Dallas-Fort Worth region in Texas, is really instructive from a hydrology standpoint, because it sits at the intersection of climate change and urbanization. So the Trinity River system in a developed country is oftentimes considered a worst case scenario for down the drain chemical exposure. In fact, many companies, EPA, there's a landmark study that Ken Dixon, Tom Waller, and some of the others were involved with that basically was examining the dechlorination of effluent discharges prior to release. So most of the time we would just, chlorinate the effluent discharge for sterilization from a public health standpoint, but then it would cause impacts to downstream uses. So that's where some of the, the really, definitive large scale studies happened. Because the Trinity River south of Dallas is almost entirely flowing year round because of effluent discharges. So like 98%
Wow.
or greater. Okay. So this is a major river system. In fact, then it flows hundreds of kilometers downstream, and it's impounded in something called Lake Livingston. Now, Lake Livingston is also an important drinking water supply for the city of Houston, Texas. So what you see through time is that as the population growth of Dallas-Fort Worth has increased, so has the increase of the discharge, okay, and the stream flow downstream from the river. So Dallas-Fort Worth's water consumption has been supporting through what we call a de facto or unplanned water reuse project, the growth and the consumption of Houston, Texas. And these are two of the largest metropolitan regions in North America. And so yeah, I was really taken by the curiosity. The first thing I started thinking about was actually metals. Okay. And I was specifically interested in cadmium because of cadmium runoff from roadways, and so we really got involved with thinking about cadmium speciation, copper, silver speciation initially in these systems, and how that would affect bioavailability and toxicity to aquatic life. But cadmium has some endocrine activities. And so because we were using effluent as source water for our stream mesocosms, and we would perform laboratory experiments, we collect samples from the field, we examine the mesocosms. Well, we had to start thinking about endocrine active, substances as well, because I was looking at biomarkers in fish, and also looking at bioaccumulation. But then that started some partnerships with some colleagues, specifically Christy Ferrand, Dwayne Huggett, looking at some endocrine active molecules. And Dwayne so this included some of the endocrine active drugs. And it was interesting because had I stayed in Mississippi for the PhD, I would have likely have worked on human and veterinary endocrine disrupting or endocrine active drugs. So I was very familiar with that space. In fact, Allison Perkins at the time, or Allison Perkins now, Allison Nimrod was the maiden name then, did like the first EE2 studies with fish. And Allison was a friend of ours in graduate school. And so we're really familiar with some of that work, and by Bill Benson and Dan Schlink and some of these guys. And so then as you start thinking about, okay, well, I'm trying to interpret the responses that I'm observing based upon the chemicals I'm measuring, and this is all GCMS stuff back then, right? And derivatization. Well, then you start asking about other things, and Dwayne was interested in heart medications, and we started working on some of the antidepressants, and then lo and behold, we detected two antidepressants in their primary metabolites. This is right after the PhD. So I'd started a professorship. So I was very fortunate. You never see this anymore these days, but I got a professorship without a postdoc. Okay. And
I saw.
Yeah, I was very lucky in that regards. Why I was successful, I think, is because I had very good mentoring, and we were starting to work on at that point topics that probably helped me a little bit. That working on topics as Dana Colpin had just published the ES&T paper, with Ed Furlong and Larry Barber and others, which of course is the most cited paper in the history of environmental science and technology.
Wow. And when you say that one of the most cited paper in the history of ES&T, you are already a broad person, and it really makes the things proud. I was asking because when I was doing PhD at the University of Tokyo, I sometimes feel, if I would have done on my own membranes, Probably I knew that membrane was going to be a big thing. So might be that is there. But I think my heart would not been there. And maybe I would have not excelled the way I excelled in environmental monitoring or water quality field or sustainability thing. So I can understand that. So here the message to my audience is that it's always interest and curiosity, because the curiosity keeps you going on. And that's what I think the kind of interface that you're providing as a risk hazard assessment expertise, water reuse or green chemistry or applied aquatic ecology. This I am reading from your the CV. That so it provides a very unique interface of the expertise. So it is. I would say suggest that everybody should follow their curiosity, not the market trend. It is a PhD is the something which you are going to live with rest of the life. Isn't it, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think students need to be aware of broader trajectories and dynamics and you know activities in the field, right? Thinking about what's shaping humanity going forward, right? I mean, water, energy, food, biodiversity, ecosystem services, chemicals, waste. All of these kinds of topics are so important, and of course, climate change being the overriding kind of driver. And so I think that students need to be aware of maybe some of those larger drivers to see how their work may fit within the broader picture. But I think if you're exactly right, if there's not curiosity, um, you know, I mean that's the excitement, that's the spice of science, man.
Mm.
I mean we're able to ask questions, and sometimes we find out the answers that might actually be mostly explaining what we're observing, which is really really cool, right? And so for me it was that simple. And then of course when we detected the drugs in the fish in the field for the first time, that it really got a lot of people's attention, and we really started kind of going down past to understand bioaccumulation dynamics, some of the toxicological implications of those molecules. But what we also realized was, in a bit of a strategic way, is that drugs, we know more about them than any other class of environmental contaminants.
Mm.
And so it provided a really nice template from which we could train students, and we realized we could learn a lot through the study of drugs, which are pretty well characterized and studied, that we could then perhaps extend to understand other types of contamination issues that are mattering to natural resources and public health.